has led global sales teams in 135 countries. He has closed over $1 billion in deals and turned struggling startups into international machines. It's Mr. Zach Selch, and he didn't start in a corner office. Mr. Zach started in a trailer in rural Pennsylvania, and he later became a sergeant in an elite airborne recon unit. So he's lived a life, he's seen some things, and if you're the kind of company and organization that wants to expand, who wants to go internationally, this might be the turning point, the most pivotal podcast episode that you've ever listened to. It's the Marketer of the Day podcast with Robert Plank. We're brought to you by dfypodcast.com, where your podcast becomes your most powerful authority and visibility asset. But sometimes you put out content, put out a website, and you say, where did all the people go? You need a sales team, you need to scale, and that's where Mr. Zach is going to turn us around and help us to find out how he's closed billions of dollars in deals internationally and how to get to that next step, next level. So, Mr. Zach, glad to see you, glad to be speaking with you.
Thank you for having me, Robert. I am happy to be here.
And so you're happy and I'm happy, but what did I leave at that introduction? What are you all about? What's your current focus and passion?
My focus and passion is on helping people get into new markets and sell internationally, right? I think, what we forget is that 94% of the world economy is outside of the U.S. If we are not selling well outside of the U.S., we're not reaching our full potential. And the best way to create more manufacturing jobs, the best way to grow the value of a company, everything is to sell more internationally. And a lot of people do it sort of in a reactive way. I talk to people all the time. I literally spoke to a company this morning and they're like, yeah, well, people reached out to us. We did this, but we didn't really have a plan. We didn't really, we haven't done anything on a proactive way. And you change that around and suddenly you are selling a lot more. You're hiring more people. You're creating, good, high paying manufacturing jobs, right? And that's a cool thing.
It is. I agree completely. And I wish I'd known that little secret years ago. I used to think, okay, well, I'll make a website, I'll get a domain name, I'll get a landing page, I'll run some ads, and I'll just wait for people to find me. But as soon as I realized, hey, there's a telephone, there's contacting the people on your list one-on-one, and especially nowadays, there's social media, there's LinkedIn especially. It's like if you're sitting by the phone waiting for it to ring, that's really not living up to your full potential, right? So we can reach out and be proactive.
That's exactly it. Back in the Gilded Age, there was somebody who said, if you make a better mousetrap, the world will beat a path to your door. And we have this idea that if we just make something great, everybody's going to want it. But it isn't. You have to sell it, right? People don't know it exists. A mediocre product with a great sales team is going to do better than a great product with no sales team or a bad sales team, right? So,
yeah. So who are your people? Like you're mentioning these sales teams, like what are they selling and what kind of companies are they working for?
Just about anything. Although, my focus is on manufacturing companies, right? Like I said, I don't know, about 20 years ago, I'm sitting in the cafeteria of the factory where I worked, and I look around, and it's a lot of, manufacturing isn't about burly 30-year-old men anymore, right? Because you can sit in a chair with tools and manufacture. So I'm looking around this cafeteria, and it's immigrants, and it's women of color, and it's, people who are over 40, all these manufacturing people. I'm talking to people. And they're sending their kids to college and they're buying houses. They're working at $35, $40 an hour manufacturing jobs. And I'm thinking, every time I sell something, I am creating a couple of manufacturing jobs, right? And that's a cool feeling. It's sort of like, well, can I do this more? And so at one point I was just, well, how can I do this for more and more factories and more companies? So when you say, who are my people, who are my clients, they're usually, mid-level manufacturers. They make something that they sell B2B. It might not be something you have in your kitchen, right? It might be a little piece of something that goes in your car or a piece of something that goes in a hospital. And some of these companies are 100 years old and some of them are startups, but they want to sell more. And again, very often what happens is, you get some really, really genius inventor creates a product. You get some really good manufacturing guy who makes the product for cheap and make sure it's high quality and all that, but they can't sell it. Or they're selling it, but probably they could be selling 5 times as much, right? And the more they sell, the better the value of the company and the more people they hire to manufacture it. And so those are my people. So, people reach out to me and they say, hey, Zach, I have 58%, 60% market share in the US, but I'm only selling in 6 countries around the world. And I don't understand why not. And we fix that for them.
Wonderful. So you have what they call the reason why, right? You have that larger goal bigger than yourself, because if it was just, oh well, I've
Exactly.
sold 5 accounts this week, I want it to be 8, that's not exciting, right? They call that burnout. But if you say, hey, I want to create 2 more manufacturing jobs because now they're doing business with this other company, this other country, like that's exciting. That's where you go. And so you say that.
It really is. Yeah.
And so these companies, they say, we're stuck. We know we could be doing better. And so, like, is there any like commonalities you see as far as like
You know,
where they're limiting your growth? What's the problem?
I'll tell you what, Robert. The commonality of my clients are the ones that say we're stuck, right? I talk to 20 people at a trade show and they'll say, oh, Zach, we're selling as much as we possibly can internationally. We're doing a great job, blah, blah, blah. We have 5% of our total sales are going international. That's fantastic. It's never going to get any better. And then I'll talk to somebody else and they'll say, hey, Zach, we're selling 35% internationally, but we feel we really need help. We're stuck. We want to get to 70%. We need some help, right? And it's the people who know that they want to keep growing that are great, right? Because they want to keep growing. Um, and that's the thing. Like they know that there's a big world out there. They know that they need to fix things. Now, what are they typically doing? Not necessarily wrong, but very often you're working with a bunch of distributors and maybe they're not the right distributors for you because somebody signed them up 20 years ago, but they're nice guys. They're nice guys. They play golf with the CEO. Everybody likes them, but they're really not a good fit for your product. Maybe because your product has changed over the years. Maybe your product has become higher tech and they haven't kept up with the ability to sell it. Or maybe they weren't the right people in the beginning, right? That's one thing. Maybe you're in the wrong markets because somebody really wanted to travel to, Japan or Italy, and now you're selling in markets that aren't the right markets, and you should be selling in better markets. And then, sometimes you're doing everything right, but you're not really digging into what your distributors are doing. Like I'll tell you, one of my clients is fantastic. She has a lot of experience. And pretty much every month, what we do is we go through her distributors and we dissect what they're doing and we try and figure out what they could be doing better. And honestly, every month I find maybe quarter or $500,000 of, I like to say it's like caught in the cushions of her couch, right? It's like money that's there. She knew it was missing, but she couldn't quite figure out what to do. And we say to the distributor, hey, if you tweak this, if you do this, if you train this sales guy a little bit better, if you follow these instructions, you're going to bring in $3 or $4 million a month more in sales, which, for my client, that works into $500,000, right?
Okay.
So that's what I do. And I firmly believe that even the very best companies can make those improvements, right? And that's the way I work with my clients.
And I imagine that it's really important to have reporting, the documenting, so that way someone like you has something to dig through. Like a couple months ago, I was doing cold calls for a client just to get like the system up and running, and then I was like, oh, do I really have to go back to the CRM and update all these contacts? And I updated some, but not all. And now 3 months later, I'm like, I looked up some contact. I'm like, this name looks really familiar. I know I
Right.
called them and I didn't take the 30 seconds to write it down. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm such an idiot. I didn't organize this
Oh,
properly. And so, yeah.
that's really, really true. And with international sales, very often, you know, people will say, oh, well, they don't work the way we do in India, Germany, Japan, wherever, right? So they'll say, yes, I'm not going to use the CRM because the spelling is weird, the address is weird, whatever. And they lose all that information. Or like I'm big on what I like to call conversion rates from stage to stage of the sales process, right? So you basically say, okay, how many demos did I do, and how many demos did I do, and how many proposals did I get out, and how many purchase orders did I get, right? And I want to look at that because maybe I have one distributor who's getting, two purchase orders for every 5 demos, and I have one distributor who's getting 2 purchase orders for every 25 demos, right? And obviously there's room to, the guy who's doing 25 demos, there's room for improvement. So I want to figure out why he's not closing more purchase orders, and I want to help him improve. And in the end of the day, he wants to improve too. But the typical attitude is, don't get in my business. Don't ask me questions. I'm doing the best I can. Everybody likes to say, I'm doing the best I can. Don't push me. And then you dig into it and you say, hey, your demo is a little weak. I can teach you to do a better job, right? Or your proposal, your proposal just isn't clear enough. I can help you improve it, right? So that's what I do. And a lot of people, what's funny is you have a domestic sales team, 12 people domestically. Maybe the sales guy is on top of them, like white on rice. He's constantly checking them. And then internationally, the sales manager is very blasé about it. He's like, oh well, these are big boys. They'll do what they got to do. They know what they're supposed to be doing. And when you really dig into those details, like money falls from the sky. I have a whole record of my record almost sounds unbelievable. Like I'll come into a company and I'll improve their sales by 1,000%, once by 4,000%, right? And it sounds like it's magic. It isn't. It's doing what you would do if you were running an 8-person domestic sales team, or you were running, a small company that's selling in Ohio. If you take those same rules and you use that on an international distribution sales organization, you dig into details, you check their conversion rates, you get to know each and every sales guy, you spend time with them in the field, you watch them do demos, you watch them do discovery calls, you talk to them every day. If you do that, you're gonna pop your sales up by 1,000%, right? And people just don't do it.
They don't do it, but you do, and that's why you win, and that's why there's a lot of people out there that are still struggling. You say, well, here's the stage to stage conversion rate, and you
Right.
diagnose the problem, and you say it could always be refined a little bit better, but if we look at it as a huge black box and it's just not working, or I'm doing the best I can, there's no room for improvement. Versus you break down the problem into smaller pieces. You say, hey, we can fix this a little bit, fix that a little bit. Next thing you know, you have a well-oiled machine. And we love these kinds of breakthrough moments, don't we? And I know that you've
Oh yeah.
scaled
Yeah.
11 startups globally. So is there anything that you think is like profound or share worthy for a podcast that was just like, oh my gosh, like this change in thinking changes everything?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to say one thing specifically for international sales, okay? And you know what? It doesn't even everything is about the engagement of the sales guy on the ground, right? And pardon me for being sexist, the salesperson on the ground could be man, woman, whatever, but that person who is actually selling your product, the more they are engaged, the more you're going to sell, right? And people get really tied up on, what color their website is going to be, or they get tied up on all these other little, most products that American companies are making now, especially in software, are over featured, right? We keep adding fantastic feature on top of fantastic feature. And a lot of them people just plain aren't using, right? We worry about all this stuff. The most important thing is the engagement of the person who's actually selling your product. If you can get those people to love you, you know, I used to do all the like sales meetings, and I would do all these things to get people to, the salespeople, not even their bosses, but there's the salespeople. I would try and get them to really love me and be engaged. And I used to say, they'll crawl through fire for me, right? And that's what you're aiming for.
So what does that look like? Like if a salesperson is engaged, like how do we tell if that
Well,
happens versus not?
oh no, that's a great, so I remember once I got into a job, and I go with the regional sales manager who had been in the job for a few years. We go visit one of his distributors who's been with us for 15, 20 years, and they make us wait in the lobby of their building for like 2 hours. I'm like, if they really found us important, there's no way they would leave us waiting, right? And I went around with this guy for a few days, and I visited different distributors he had, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, hey, it's really good to see you, Bill. Let's grab you. Let's go out. We'll get a great meal." Blah blah blah. They didn't talk business with him. They treated him like he was like their uncle visiting for tourism purposes, but they really weren't involved with our business, right? 2 3 years later, I would go to a trade show, and every sales guy from every distributor would come by our booth and hang out at our booth, have a cup of coffee with me, have a beer in the morning, have a beer with me in the evening. I knew their names, I knew their kids' names, I knew their wives' names. And the thing is, like, here's the thing. Let's say you're a domestic sales guy working for a manufacturer, and you're getting a salary, right? You are selling a single product. You know what you're selling. Every day, 9 a.m., you're selling that one product. Now, you're a distributor sales guy in Saudi Arabia. Maybe you have 25 products in your product card, right? And you have to get up every day and decide what you're going to sell. Now, do you sell Zach's product, or do you sell somebody else's product, right? And if you have let's say you have a 40-hour week, maybe you have a 50-hour week. You have 25 products. If you're completely fair, you're giving me 2 hours, but I don't want 2 hours. I want 16 hours. I want 25 hours, right? I want you to be focused on my product.
Right.
And if I can drive up that engagement, now look at it this way. Let's say I'm selling, let's just use some numbers here. Let's say I have 10,000 distributor sales hours every year focused on selling my product. Just use a nice round number. And I'm selling $10 million, right? If I can build that up to 20,000 sales hours, I'm going to be selling $20 million, right?
Right.
Now, what does that mean, 10,000 sales hours? Well, that means that my 100 salespeople are each giving me 100 hours a year, right? Which is 2 hours a week. So if I can get them just to give me 4 hours a week, boom, I double my sales. If I can get them to give me 20 hours a week, right? Can I increase my sales by 1,000%? I can, right? And that's all about the engagement.
Very nice. So, and it seems like there's sometimes it's a math problem, and sometimes it's just like doing the foundational stuff, right? Being a people person, having this attention to detail. And this is like a fascinating subject, and you can tell that I'm kind of getting the lessons in the abstract, right? Me personally, I don't know much about international sales, but there's still these kind of universal lessons that I'm like, ooh, well, that's still helpful. I can still apply that. But since we only just met, and know there's so much more to you than what we've talked about already, right? I know that you run marathons, you help people go global. But in our final minutes of our conversation, is there a missing question in our conversation? Is there something that I should be asking you? I just don't know to ask you.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll tell you what, I also am a big believer in work life balance. Right, I have 3 kids. I've been married to the same woman for 26 years. I have a great relationship with my family. I have a dog. I'm hoping to live for another 30 or 40 years, and I think the idea is that you gotta take good care of yourself too. You gotta take care of be part of your community. You gotta take care of your health. You gotta take care of your connection and your relationships with people. All these are really important.
I agree completely. So it's important to work hard and play hard and also do other things because there, even though work and growing a company and doing all those right things, that's important, there also is even more to life than just making the money. It's also what you do with your health and also how you enrich the lives of others, especially as you said, when you are looking for motivation in how to improve these companies or make more sales, you say, hey, what will it lead to? It will lead to enriching other lives. And that's just a great place to just think about what we're doing moving forward in the future. And if someone says, okay, a lot of what you said makes sense. And if I am having my sales team work domestically, and I know that there's more potential, right? You figure America's like what 4% of the world, and so there's all these other countries out there, and so I can use the help of Mr. Zach Selch and his team at globalsalesmentor.com. Who are your people? Who should be reaching out to you, and what for?
Well, if you are tasked with getting into new markets, or you are responsible for getting into new markets, or you basically, or you're selling internationally today and you're selling less than 10% of your total sales outside of your home market, I could probably improve that, right? So you should reach out to me. I don't typically work with like software as a service, to be honest, but if you do reach out to me, I can connect you to somebody who does. But mostly, if you make some type of a manufactured good and you think you can sell more internationally or you'd like to sell more internationally, I could help you.
Very nice. Worth having that conversation. If you sell that manufactured good and you say, I know I could sell more of it internationally, but it sounds scary, it seems daunting. Well, hey, not if you have a guy in your corner who has lived this, who eats, breathes, and sleeps this stuff in between all the other important activities in life. And we've been speaking with Mr. Zach Selch. That's Selch. And you can find him on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/international sales growth. But where we really want you to go is globalsalesmentor.com. You'll find out all about his keynote speaking and about all these free tools for international sales growth. If you're the kind of organization that is looking to double your distributor engagement and drive real global growth, then this is an important website for you to go to and to check out Mr. Zach's podcast, his books, his testimonials, his articles, and so much more. That's globalsalesmentor.com. As we're headed to Global Sales Mentor, it's time for the scary part of the show, Mr. Zach, where I try to stump you, I try to put you on the spot by asking about a fun quote or lesson that has served you. So what comes to mind as far as a fun quote or lesson?
Oh, cool. So, I'll tell you what. There was a French author in the 19th century named Victor Hugo, and he had a quote that said, "The man who follows a thread through the course of his day will have an advantage over everybody else." And what he meant was, if you have a plan, right? You wake up and you know what you're doing, you're already halfway there. And I think I sort of try and live that. Is I always like to have a plan. One of my bosses actually said, she was writing a report on me, a periodic report for work, and she said, "Well, Zach always has a plan A, B, and a C." Right? I like to always have a plan, and I think that is one of those things that no matter what you do, whether you're a doctor, a businessman, a sales guy, a student, having a plan is going to help you out.
Of course. And you figure a student says, what classes am I going to today? A surgeon says, What are my appointments? Imagine if a doctor just showed up and said, "Okay, what do we do today? We'll figure it out." That would
What
be
am I going to
ridiculous.
cut today? Yeah.
Yeah, we'll wing it. We'll cowboy it as we go along. It would be insane.
Yeah.
And you are my seventh out of seventh podcast today, and I have a calendar, a
Wow.
schedule, and it is a pain in the rear, right? It is a pain to say, "Oh, here's what my
That's
plan is
pretty
today." But
impressive. Yeah.
yeah, if you don't make that plan, someone else will make the plans for you, or just the chaos of life. And we
Yeah.
don't want that, right? You want to be dedicated and focused. That way, we can get some results, get things done, not work so hard, be efficient, and then get back to enjoying life. And so, Mr. Zach wants to help you enjoy life and to achieve all these amazing things. And you can get that. You can learn international sales growth by going to globalsalesmentor.com. Train your people and get them producing. And it's been such a blast speaking with you, Mr. Zach. I learned a lot, laughed a lot.
Thanks a lot,
Thanks for being
Robert.
here. I appreciate you.
Thanks a lot, Robert. I appreciate it too. Thanks.